We made the most 90s game ever. What if you took everything you loved about video games and movies and put it into one video game? One that looks, sounds, and plays just like you remember from the early 90s.
So basically everything in Prison City. Hi, I'm Programancer, lead developer of the game.
And I'm Justin, creative director at Retroware, where we publish and develop games, like Prison City, where if we didn't tell you, you might think was a forgotten NES gem.
Which is chock full of gaming and movie references.
The goal was, of course, to make the best game we could, but as time went on, we kept wanting to add more cool stuff. So we took a lot of the things from the 90s that we grew up with. And when you take all this 90s nostalgia and put it together into one radical Frankenstein's monster, you end up with the most 90s game that never existed. There's a lot in there in terms of early NES games, like Mega Man, especially Sparkman stage, and a little touch of Mega Man X on Super Nintendo with Spark Mandrill's stage.
Especially with Power Plant, there's very, very specific references to Sparkman and Spark Mandrill. I wanted to kind of combine those two influences together. So, like for example, there's these like rollers that go across the walls that shoot an electric shock back and forth. That's directly from Sparkman. And then there's the Spark Mandrill influence, where there's this like super dark room that you can't see in, and then these like light enemies come across and light up the room. I always thought that was a really cool mechanic, and it deserved to be used again.
And speaking of the NES, most notably, a lot of people will see Shatterhand and Power Blade in there.
Yeah, so I wanted to have a game that was very simple in terms of like what you have to do in each level. I didn't want to do just the straight up go start to finish of the level, beat the boss, and be done with it. And I really like the structure of Power Blade, where you have to go and find a contact first and then get to the boss. So I thought it would be really neat to have that with the weight of a game like Shatterhand, and it just kind of works perfectly together.
Right, but of course not Power Blade 2.
No. I am not a fan of Power Blade 2. I feel like that was a very cheap opportunity to try to capitalize on a very successful first entry.
There's a little Street Fighter 2010 in there.
Yes, I like the way that game is darker. So the darker palettes allow you to bring out more details with the NES palette, and I thought that was a really good jumping point for visual reference.
There's a lot of flares and explosions and stuff just flying all over the screen back in the day. But with Prison City, it just looks so much nicer, more polished, more bombastic, just because you can do more with the technology nowadays.
Yeah, I like having just a lot of like kinetic explosions and lots of particles going everywhere, stuff you could never really do on the NES, and it still feels like an NES game.
Yeah, I mean, well, speaking of, a lot of people say that Batman from Sunsoft is a pretty big influence for this game, but it wasn't.
No. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with the Batman NES game. I think I've only ever played the first level, so in terms of inspiration, maybe the pipes and the rooftops level is about as close as you get. Sorry, gamers, the roller enemies are more of a Mega Man trope than a Batman trope.
I've always been a fan of the sci-fi, dystopian, cyberpunk-esque movies that were coming out in the 90s. Given that Prison City takes place in the far-off future of 1997, there were some good opportunities for a reference or two, especially movies like Johnny Mnemonic, which, Cyberpunk took a lot from. I think I was the one who was like, hey, put a talking dolphin in the game based on Jones from Johnny Mnemonic.
I mean, that is like the perfect character for this game. Just the weird juxtaposition of having a talking smart dolphin as one of your contacts.
Yeah, and I guess speaking of mecha, there's a lot of mecha stuff in there, from Mod Loader, little Metal Gear in there, but definitely the Eye is like the Zaku from Gundam. I know Ryan from Retroware threw in a ton of references into this game, and that was definitely one of them.
Yeah, that was like a 2-day implementation. He said, hey, we need to do the Eye from the Zakus. I was like, oh yeah, it'd be perfect. And then the next day, boom, it was in. It works perfect for that boss.
Like on Discord and stuff, we would say, hey, you know what would be cool? Hey, you know what's cool? A dolphin. Put a dolphin in the game. Hey, put the Zaku Eye in there from Gundam. And then like 2 days later, it would be fully implemented into the game. So you're a madman.
Well, hey, if it looks good and it plays good, it's in.
I forgot who was, but we talked about the Quintessons from Transformers, where they have like the 4 heads and the different almost bipolar personalities, and then you made each side one of the sports teams of Detroit.
Yeah, that was a really cool boss, and it was a Ryan idea. He wanted some sports influence in there, And then he was giving me the Transformers reference, and I was like, it'd be really cool to set this up, but also make it like a top where it spins, and then each head does a different thing.
And another movie that found its way into this game, probably my favorite 90s movie ever, Terminator 2.
He's fantastic. This is his best performance ever.
Yeah. So anytime you die in lava, Hal throws his hand up and just thumbs up while he goes down.
And not only that, this game comes out on August 29th, which was Judgment Day in Terminator 2.
Yep. I don't want to say it's deliberate, but that was deliberate. It's Judgment Day.
Nostalgia is rightfully super important to a lot of people because it's our childhood. It reminds people of where they came from, maybe even a better time in our lives. And Prison City has weaponized this nostalgia to make the most 90s game of all time.
I mean, it is very blatant.
We haven't even come close to covering all the features in this game, like the CRT filter, music player, and different modes to replay the game with. But we'll be doing another video that gets into all that. Comment below if you'd like to hear me and Travis talk more about these references, or you can find them yourself when the game comes out at the end of the month.